Hollywood is a strange place if you're in trouble. Everybody thinks it's contagious. Judy Garland.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to Uncut and welcome back to another amazing movie review. Today we have once again one of our favorite genres. We have a horror film, the one and only Late Night with the Devil. We watched this movie about 2 weeks ago.
2-3 weeks ago.
2-3 weeks
Something
ago.
like that.
And we liked it so very much that we actually told my family that they needed to go watch it. Mind you, my family does not go to the movies often.
And granted, they didn't really like this one either.
Yeah, they weren't big fans, but you know what? I think it was a movie worth watching.
Oh, yeah. 100%. It caught my eye the moment I saw the ads all over TikTok. There's something about the 70s TV show look that I thought was really unique.
And it definitely has an unsettling feeling to
Yeah.
it. And it's not necessarily a movie that's going to have jump scares every other scene. This movie is just going to make you feel uncomfortable throughout the whole
Yeah.
movie.
I think what was really interesting is how it's like semi-found footage, semi-actual movie.
Like behind the scenes.
Yeah, so you get a little bit more that found footage can tend to not give you. So I thought it was really clever. I don't think I had seen a movie that is like a TV show, which I think one of the reviews I was reading talked about it, how it might have been different to watch it in front of a TV as like a made-for-TV movie versus something in a theater.
Although I definitely loved watching it in the big screen, especially the old feeling was
Yeah.
even more unsettling with the audio behind you and in front of you. I don't know. It was just a movie that had me on my toes the whole time. And funny enough, we actually just went to Les University's end of the year showcase of filmmakers, and one of the junior films actually made something very similar.
Quincy Can't Escape is what it was called.
Yeah.
And it was also set on a sitcom or like a TV show.
Like an old
but
TV
the
show.
the premise of the film was it was a sitcom instead of a reality show or talk show. And the character comes to the realization that they're going to show. But they both felt very unsettling.
Yeah. And also with the back and forth of like old TV show and kind of like
And then
regular movie.
regular movie. I would like to explore this
Yeah.
style a little bit further because I thought it was really fun and really interesting, and I like all the different ways you can play with it.
And I
I
feel like
really like that.
right now we are in a point in which filmmakers are looking back at a tape filmmaking or non-digital filmmaking techniques, not necessarily using non-digital filmmaking, but recreating it with digital cameras. So it's definitely something that people in filmmakers have been doing more and more lately. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about what this movie specifically is about?
Yeah, so this movie came out March 22nd. Apparently you could watch it on AMC Plus and on Prime now. So if you haven't seen
Interesting.
it, you can go see it there. It's also on YouTube TV. It was directed by the Cairns brothers, Cameron Cairns and Colin Cairns. It made about 11.4 million at the box office. And the main character, played by David Dasmalchian, I think is how you say it. He actually was in Oppenheimer and Dune.
Yeah.
So I have seen his
I
face
recognize his face.
around. I have a feeling we'll see more of him. Very fun movie. It has a decent Rotten Tomatoes score. I know sometimes with horror movies, if they're not full of jump scares, it's
People
like
tend to be
people
like,
to be
"Eh."
like bored.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was the atmosphere that kept people interested in this one, definitely.
With horror movies is so very difficult because people always trying to figure out how it's done and how it wouldn't make sense, even
Right.
though it's a movie. And I think there is a delicate balance between trying too hard to jump scare people or trying too little to scare people. So some people
Right.
might be like, it wasn't scary enough. Some people might be like, they tried too hard. But I think this movie definitely had a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Definitely scary, definitely suspenseful, and it just gave the audience a little bit of that tense feeling throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
This film was about, so it was a host movie night
late night talk show host in the 70s who's a little, his show is kind of going through it. Might get canceled, and so he's planned this amazing Halloween episode
because he was always like good, but he was always like number 2.
Yeah, he was trying to be the number 1 late night talk show host. So he brings on a bunch of people. One person in particular wrote a book about a girl who was a part of this cult that worshipped a demon, and he was like, why not have this be a segment? What's the worst that can happen? And obviously, the worst has happened. Hence the movie poster. I won't spoil it because I think it's kind of hard to spoil it. There's so much little details, little plot lines that we're following. And like we said, it actually starts off with like a pre-documentary feel where it's like, this tape you're about to watch is from the last episode of the show,
of this one show, and it gives a little bit of background of the show itself
and of like the main guy, and then you get into the footage, which is like that 70s tape, and then there's behind the scenes when they cut to commercial break that's in black and white, and I don't know if we're supposed to be like someone was like following them like in 4K. And then it cuts back to the show, and then at the very end it's very daunting, but cut to this in color 4K thing that I think is happening in the main character's head.
Exactly.
It's hard to explain the ending, but it's very cool. I loved that juxtaposition throughout. I think we do need to talk about the little AI art controversy that's been happening with this film. Is it this one? Nah. No. So in between the moments where they cut to commercial break, there was art on the screen. Like little like vintage style drawings, and that was made with AI art. And I don't remember if I heard if they had hired people but decided to not use their art or what. But I have seen some discourse online about them using it, wanting to boycott the movie. So
I feel like I will need more information on what actually happened. Like, first of all, I don't think that the graphics that they used were impactful enough for me to remember them.
Right.
And I don't think that was the goal, for you to remember them. So I don't know. I will need more information on that. I definitely agree that we should be paying our artists and we should be paying the people that make this by hand and actually want to make a living making art for movies and for TV shows and just art in general. And I have friends that do it. So I definitely agree that we should not be moving into making AI graphics when you have millions of dollars of budget.
Right.
But I think that's why it's not necessarily the case that they just wanted to get something quick and save some money. Because in theory, they could have gotten a cheap, on the lower end side of a graphic artist to make these graphics. So I don't necessarily think it was them trying to cut money. There's probably actually someone behind it that, because I was actually looking at the IMDb, and I'm pretty sure there are some graphic designers that were part of the movie cast, crew. So I don't know. I feel like we just need more information. I don't have enough, and I didn't really do a lot of research on that specific case. I don't think there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
It's just that when you see it in theaters, there's still the feeling of AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw one video kind of showing that it definitely was made with AI because the art didn't make sense. You know how AI art can kind of look a little weird, a little funky. So it had that sort of look. And I am kind of sad that they went that route. I'm very curious as to why.
Given that everything had so much care.
Yeah, like the whole set
detail.
And the production design, they like went above and beyond to give the right feel. Like, I don't know why at the end of the day obvious AI art was used, but I hope that some people take away like, oh, okay, I don't want this sort of backlash, so let me actually hire somebody, because I definitely think with the style that they were going for, they could have easily found someone to do that,
for sure.
Artists around the world do that vintage style art. all the time. So
if you're watching on YouTube right now, you'll be seeing one of those images AI right here.
Example. But yeah, so back to the actual film for a moment. I wanted to talk about how the ending happened, because reflecting on it now, I think all of the buildup was really fun. That final psychedelic, can we call it psychedelic sequence, was a little weird.
And it's definitely funky as the viewer, because in theory, as you said, you start with it being a documentary of found footage, and then you also see the behind the scenes somehow. It feels like you're not supposed to be there, but it's so different from the vintage footage that we have. And then you have that at the end with it just being, in theory, something that is in the main character's head.
That we wouldn't have seen no matter who could have been recording, because theoretically it's happening in the main character's head. So I ask, how are we even seeing it? Like, I feel like that thread was kind of lost by the end.
A little bit.
You being the viewer. I don't know. Maybe I would have liked it if they didn't have the beginning documentary feel.
For sure. Because I feel like that was there to almost hold your hand a little bit and tell you this is the background of the story.
And this is like the truth.
Yeah. Which,
like, I understand them wanting to do that, but I don't think it connected.
Yeah, if anything, I mean, all things be said, it was pretty cool the way that we were on set. Then we saw all this psychedelic stuff happen. Then we were back on set actually seeing what happened. Then maybe what they did with it being behind the scenes, maybe should have been also like in black and white and not vintage. That way we know that this is not part of the documentary, quote unquote, that we're seeing.
Right.
And that way the audience knows you're watching a documentary, blah, blah, blah. Whatever is in black and white is actually not something that is part of the documentary. It's just part of the movie itself. It's like really meta.
Yeah.
And then back to the stage and being like, this is actually what's being recorded and what people saw in live television. The other thing, though, is that in theory, it did cut for the live television audience. It did cut. And we saw the no not signal announcement on television. And I believe the end is also in like good quality instead of vintage quality.
Yeah, no, the whole ending, the reason why it looked so stark was it wasn't even in the same aspect ratio.
Exactly.
They made it wide. I don't know the term. They made it wide. It was like 4K quality.
Yeah. But they made that the ending.
It was so different.
But then in theory, there is no ending to a documentary.
Yeah, like in theory, we wouldn't have seen any of that. We would have just seen how it ends with everybody on the floor.
I would have loved to have something from the documentary filmmakers being like, this next part was not seen on live television, but there were still cameras recording and we were able to find the footage and here it is, and also have it vintage film taped. But I don't know, it just, I guess that final part definitely missed the mark a little bit, and it made it less memorable, because yes, the ending, I don't really remember the ending that much. Like I don't keep it in my mind that much, because the middle part, the entire movie, from beginning till like right before the end, it was so good, and that the ending just was neither here nor there.
I think maybe it could be a case where you try to have too much of a story in one thing. Like, there's so much backstory for the late night talk show host that they're also, that like maybe every other thing that they're trying to accomplish within like other storylines, it kind of felt like a lot. Like I think I read a review where it said like it was like overstimulating. Yeah, the amount of things and plot lines that were happening, because I mean that's what they were trying to connect us to at the end, was a late night talk show host's relationship with the cult. The cult and the demon that's present in the show. But I feel like that it made it a little, I guess, like overstimulating.
Yeah, I would have liked a little bit more of them leaning into the mockumentary feeling. Yeah, for sure, because
a little bit more.
There was a little bit at the beginning, then there was no more.
Yeah. Shall we get into some official reviews?
Let's do it.
Cool. So this first one is from Variety.com.
Okay.
And it says, This isn't the scariest movie, but neither is it entirely a self-conscious joke. The Karens maintain an astute balance between pop culture irony, familiar if not always predictable thrills, including some creature/gore FX, and a kind of hallucinatory mass media surrealism, one that recalls the title of a 1970s cautionary tome about TV, The Plug-in Drug. Otello Stolfo's production designer and Stephanie Hook's costumes get the era's aesthetics of middle American taste down pat. Ditto cinematographer Matthew Temple and the Karen's own editing its technical presentation. Eventually the lines blur between Roscoe James Irwin's theme music for the show within the movie. Reese R.C. plays Jack's onstage band conductor/sidekick, and Glenn Richards' original score just as the characters grow unsure whether what's transpiring is mere entertainment or a living nightmare. The actors, too, refrain from caricature to the right degree. Dasmal Chain. I'll learn how to say his last name eventually. Concurrently playing Albert DeSalvo in Hulu's Boston Strangler, which I did not know he's playing a strangler too. Lends Delroy an amiable mediocrity that explains both his popularity and its limits. Bliz and Bazzi are effective, slightly underplaying potentially cartoonish figures. Gordon convinces as a publicity-savvy expert used to be being disbelieved, and Torelli is appropriately eerie in what several wobblier recent horrors have underlined is always the trickiest part, the child meant to harbor great evil. Though not quite a slam dunk, its some impact is more pleasingly ingenious than indelible. Late Night with the Devil definitely reps a personal best for the Karens.
Wow. Yeah, I guess this movie really was in that fine line of being too comical, being too animated, I guess. But I think it stayed on the right side of it.
Yeah.
It managed to keep all of the characters believable. Even the sidekick was like funny, but still like, what's going on with him?
Believable. And I think that had a lot to do with also the behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
We saw way more of them. I feel like if it was just the on-screen, they would
He doesn't show
forced,
that he's uncomfortable.
Yeah, they would be forced to kind of play into the, oh, haha, I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that sort of vibe. Whereas off-screen, especially for the girl, you notice quite a bit of the mannerisms change up. And the demon-possessed girl like puts on like a face as soon as the cameras are back on.
She's really unsettling. Oh my goodness.
She's really good.
And then I think this movie just in general is gonna set, or I hope it marks a new era for horror, because I feel like right now we're kind of stagnant in the horror films that we get. Like the diversity of horror films that we get. Because we're getting a lot of the Exorcist kind of vibe, which I love. But I feel like we need to see a little bit more. Like Jordan Peele is doing a different kind of horror. Maybe we need more slasher. We don't have enough slasher anymore. We need more diversity, which I think horror has never had a lot of diversity at once. So maybe this can give us a little bit more of that suspenseful that we've kind of lost.
Playing with the plot more than just the scares.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. This next one, I apologize that it's long, but it has some great
Caitlin said,
information.
I'm unable to cut this down because every single word is so good.
It's a pretty solid review. It's IndieWire.com, and they gave it 4 stars out of 5.
Wow.
So, as for Late Night with the Devil, the film's greatest asset is the show's greatest liability, Mr. Midnight himself, Jack Delroy. Making the most of his first starring role, Dune actor David Dasmalchian so expressively inhabits the talk show host's beige suit and something eating swarm that you can read the desperation on his face as if it were a cue card. Meanwhile, the Karens brothers' commitment to the bit, which includes shooting the movie on 3 swiveling pedestal cameras in a boxy aspect ratio lit with fuzzy period-appropriate lamps, helps their star seem even more at home in his character's skin. His sunken features cast deep shadows across his face, when he smiles, inviting a hint of darkness into Jack's studied geniality without revealing whether he's evil or merely a vessel for it to get some quality airtime. The Karens' script lacks the same ambiguity. A heavy-handed prologue makes it way too easy to predict the ending. But Dasmalchian's nimble performance as a talk show host who wants to push the envelope without losing his audience's goodwill allows Late Night with the Devil to walk the line between horror and satire without losing its balance until the final minutes. Dorsey's neediness is scary enough that the movie around him can largely survive on the strength of its atmosphere, on the disquiet created between the playful danger of live TV and the dawning realization that Jack is in over his head. To that end, gore hounds will be rewarded by a glorious scene of Rob Bottin-esque practical effects, and Torelli's performance as a sometimes possessed Lily is wonderfully unnerving for how it buries Linda Blair-like theatrics under the sort of empty smile that Sydney Sweeney perfected on The White Lotus. But Late Night with the Devil isn't the kind of horror film that will leave you shaken with fear. For all their technical wizardry, which extends to the brilliant CGI effects in the third act, the Cairns are less interested in fraying your nerves than in sowing distrust. The essence of this movie isn't found in the brief moment when Christo projectile vomits black goo across the stage, or in the archival footage of Lily's parents worshipping the demon Abraxas, but rather in the catty and protracted scenes where Carmichael's skepticism is challenged by evidence of the supernatural. He insists that psychics and Satan aren't real, and he's determined for Americans to know the truth of what they see on TV, even if they can appreciate the pleasure of being fooled. But such thinking blinds him to the truth behind June's mantra that everyone has a demon inside them. Carmichael is a naive man in an incredibly cynical world, and despite his evident gifts as a hypnotist, he fails to appreciate what kind of evil people are capable of welcoming into their hearts and homes, along with the warmth of the TV glow. Late Night with the Devil fails to deliver an ending as fresh as the rest of the movie. The fact that you'll see it coming makes it less fun, but sure as heck doesn't make it less honest.
I definitely agree. And Carmichael's character being skeptical made the movie so much better.
That scene, there's this one amazing
The belly
sequence,
one? Yep.
in which a character believes that worms are crawling out of his body. He's like ripping his skin, trying to get them all out. And then you rewind the tape because Carmichael is like, did you know that I fooled all of you? And you rewatch the footage and you realize we are all hypnotized, as is the man himself, into believing that worms are actually coming out of his body. It was shocking. I was shocked seeing that scene.
There were audible gasps in the audience at that time.
It was horrific.
People were covering their eyes.
So well done. Oh, I envy skill
and
like
I
that.
absolutely love the way that they went back in the tape, and it's different what Carmichael is saying in the film to what he was saying in the first part. And when we're hypnotized, that just makes it scary. It makes it a little bit like realistic, I guess.
It made me feel like I was actually watching it like as like a live TV. That's like what it felt like. It
like
had that
Crazy
awkwardness of live TV where like anything can happen, anybody can act out differently. It felt so real in that moment. I really loved that.
So, how many clapping boards out of 5 would you give this movie?
I think a solid 4.
4? Okay. I was thinking 4.3.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely one of the better horror movies that we've seen in a long time. It
was a lot of fun. It is very memorable. I really enjoyed it.
I will watch it again.
I will.
I'll show it to anybody who's willing to see it.
I just think it's so unique and so fun, and I'm wondering too if I could even find out more about the cult that is only mentioned at the beginning and the end. Try to see if there's any other signs, because I felt like I left with more questions than answers by the end.
I feel like watching it a second time will give you a different feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that cult was weird.
It was weird.
Weird owl? I wish I knew.
But as you can see, we really enjoy watching this movie, and we'll definitely recommend you watching it in your own time. I think you can still find it in really select theaters. Maybe. But you're better off finding it online or whenever it comes fully on streaming services. You said Prime, but I'm not sure if it's already free. But as for us, we gave it like a 4.15 in average. And if you want to see more of this movie, we'll be making some like little shorts and stuff about our first thoughts and whatnot. But you can follow us on Instagram at NCOT the podcast, and you can follow us on YouTube to watch the recording of this video, as well as many others, as That Film Couple. That's the same handle for TikTok, That Film Couple. And you can follow us on Twitch as Sebas Parra 1K. You can follow, if you're watching right now on YouTube, you can find us on any platform for podcasting as NCOT!! And last but not least, you can follow me on Instagram as sebi.mp4.
You can follow me at caitlin.mp4.
Thank you so much for being here one more time, and I hope we see you in the next one.
And cut!